Chris Emmett believes that the Chicago Bears' pursuit of Trey Smith may not be over despite him being franchise tagged by the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to talk a little bit about that. Plus, we're going to look at the recent mock drafts for the Chicago Bears and who they have the Bears taking. Plus, Adam Johns believes that the relationship between Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams may not be what people are hoping that it's going to be. We're going to talk about all that plus more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host, Derek Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. I want to start off talking about this one. Of course, after Trey Smith was franchise tagged by the Chicago Bears, many people, us included, have all moved on to other people that the Chicago Bears could target. And, I've even talked about why the Chicago Bears not tying up upwards of $20 million with Trey Smith may be the best case scenario for the Bears to flesh out other spots on this team as well. Well, Chris Emmett from 670 The Score had an interesting take in regards to Trey Smith and the Bears' pursuit of him may not being done. They said this: for polls, the sentiment applied to Pro Bowl guard Trey Smith. According to multiple sources, the Bears coveted him, but he won't reach unrestricted free agent after the Chiefs used the non-exclusive franchise tag on him last Friday. That means Smith is free to sign an offer sheet with another team, but the Chiefs have matching rights beyond that. If the Chiefs decline to match, they'd receive 2 first-round picks from the team that signed Smith. But still, that doesn't necessarily mean that Smith won't be available early. Last March, the Chiefs utilized the non-exclusive franchise tag on quarterback Legarius Sneed with the intention to trade him. He was dealt to the Titans in late March, with the Chiefs receiving a 3rd-round pick and the two teams swapping 7th-round slots. Chiefs general manager Brett Veach indicated last week that he hopes to sign Smith to a long-term extension, but the possibility looms that Kansas City could trade its tagged player once again. Now, this is an interesting perspective to have on it because most people have moved on, right? And I love the fact that Chris Emmett did bring this up, and even with that said, that it's something that the Chiefs, that this GM has done before. So it's not just looking at something else that's happened in the NFL and trying to apply that to a different situation. It's at least looking at the same team that did the same thing with a different player last year. And so, the non-exclusive tag is one thing already, right? Teams giving up 2 first-round picks for a player that could become a free agent at the end of the season is not something that I see likely, not something that I think the Bears or any other team should even be willing to do. Now, if it comes down to it that over the next few weeks that Trey Smith and the Kansas City Chiefs cannot come to an agreement on a contract extension, there is a possibility that the Chiefs do look to trade Trey Smith at that point, and could the Bears come knocking for it? Now, that's the part that we have to answer here, right? And here's the part that I don't know if this will shock very many people. No, I don't think the Chicago Bears should look to trade for Trey Smith, even if he becomes available. Giving up assets on top of it, and I got to be consistent here. What did I say about players like Myles Garrett, right? Trading assets on top of the cut that is going to do into your salary cap for where the Bears are right now is not worth it, right? Just not in my opinion. And so I don't think that taking the same salary cap hit that you would have took had you been able to sign him outright on top of giving up other assets, I don't think that's worth it when you look at the market that's still out there. The fact that you can still drastically improve your interior offensive line without giving up those things. Are they Trey Smith caliber? No. Nobody's saying that. There was a reason why he was projected to be the number 1 offensive lineman target on the market this offseason. But I just don't think that it's where the Bears are in a position to give that up, considering we still are far away, right? Now, I may look at it that way. You may look at it a different way, and Ryan Poles may see it a third way from all of that, right? So we'll see what the future does hold, but I do think that it's interesting that Chris Emmett was one of the first people to talk about the fact that the pursuit of Trey Smith doesn't necessarily have to stop just because he's franchise tagged, because it's non-exclusive franchise tagging rights. and we'll see what the Bears do there, right? Like I said before, I personally don't see the Bears being willing to give up that amount of assets. When it comes down to it, and unlike Sneed, like I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs are just going to be taking a 3rd round pick and a pick swap in the 7th round for Trey Smith. They're probably going to want more than that, right? Especially considering they can get 2 first-round picks if a team signs him outright, or signs him to an offer sheet, and he ends up going to that team on that offer sheet. So it is something to look out for and monitor, that the Bears could, if they just have Trey Smith as the guy that they absolutely want on this team, that it could pivot that way to where maybe the Bears are looking to make a trade for Trey Smith if the Kansas City Chiefs are willing to talk that deal with them. I still think that it is the Chiefs are going to try to work out a long-term extension with him. I think it is what it is there. He's going to command well over $20 million annually on the market. So it's really determined by what the compensation is, right? We have enough money to get the deal done. I don't think the us having the money is not the thing, right? It comes down to the money and what the Chiefs would want into it. The Bears and no team, I don't think, are trading 2 first-round picks for Trey Smith. They're just not, right? So because of that, it's gonna mean that no other team's gonna really probably sign him to an offer sheet. And so the price tag with Legarius Sneed being set for what it is, that's a little bit different, right? The Bears have 4 picks in the first 3 rounds of this draft. Does any of that entice them, right? If a 3rd round pick on top of the compensation can land them Trey Smith, if that can do, is that worth it? That's the question that you have to ask her, because again, no team's going to give up the 1st round picks. I don't think the Kansas City Chiefs are going to hold out maybe to a 1st round pick evaluation. They could, but we'll see there, right? But a 3rd rounder, maybe even a 2nd rounder could be what they asked for. Is that worth it for Trey Smith? I'm going to turn that one over to you guys, right? Is that something that if the Kansas City Chiefs cannot work out a long-term deal with Trey Smith and thus they look to move on from him rather than, take the chance of him walking away for nothing in a different free agency, would a 2nd or 3rd round pick be worth it for the Chicago Bears? I'm not saying both, I'm saying one or the other. And the Bears should play hardball with this, but we'll see what the future does hold. But let me know what you guys think on that down below. With that said, though, we're at this time period, especially after the draft combine. More and more mock drafts are going to be coming up in this one, and we do have a new mock draft for the Chicago Bears with some new names on it as well in this one. Let's get into these mock drafts now, right? In round 1, right, they have the Bears selecting Will Campbell at number 10. Of course, the tackle / interior offensive lineman. Here's the thing, right? If Will Campbell falls to number 10, I think there's no doubt that the Chicago Bears should take him at number 10. I have my doubts on if Will Campbell's going to be there at number 10, right? And then I also look at, even if he's not there, Armand Membou, who I first pushed here on my mock draft. Now Bears fans, after his combine, are all in on Membou. There was a guy literally in the comment section telling me, hey, you're crazy. Why would we take Membou in the 1st round? Because he's clearly not a starter at the NFL level. And it's like, do you see why I do this now? Do you see why I do this is all I'm saying, man. Did you see why I do this? Because, listen, Membou had an amazing, amazing draft combine. All jokes aside, right? Not even to toot my own horn. That man had an amazing draft combine, and it seems like a lot more people now are in on Membou and seeing what he could be, right? So you look at Kelvin Banks Jr., Armand Membou, and Will Campbell. Those are the guys that are probably the best tackles in this draft. And the Bears have a good chance at one of those guys falling to them at number 10, right? Now, the question is that, especially with some of the talent later on in the draft, do they trade back? Do they stay there? I think that the Bears staying at number 10 is probably the safe bet here. Right, maybe if they swap one pick or whatever, one spot or whatever else it is, which we've seen done weirdly enough in the NFL, teams will swap one spot and give an additional pick, which is weird. But hey, when it comes down to it, but I think when it because of the value that's there at the tackles with Kelvin Banks, with Membou, with Will Campbell, I think that the Bears have a lot of opportunity there. Now, some people think Will Campbell will slide down to guard with the shorter wingspan and things like that. I'm not really worried about that. I'm worried about the talent overall, and the Bears have a great chance to get a talent there at number 10. But for what it's worth, this mock draft has the Bears drafting Will Campbell at number 10, which once was thought that maybe he wouldn't even be there at number 10. I think with the rise of Membou, now people are starting to think that maybe there's a chance that Membou could go higher, right? So we'll see what happens there. with round 2, they have the Chicago Bears drafting with pick 39, Nick Scrutiny, the edge out of Texas A&M. Now, this is not a guy that I've scouted very heavily. He hasn't been really heavily on my board, but of course, with him being here, I went and looked at him. 6'4", 285 pounds, 5 sacks, 1 forced fumble. When you look at over the course of his collegiate career, he's had 17 sacks in 3 years between Purdue and Texas A&M over his collegiate career. He has the physical makeup. It would make a lot of sense to put him on the opposite side of Montez Sweat, right? And, people think that he could go into first round or beginning of second. But when you look at Landon Jackson, Shamar Stewart, these guys could push him down into round 2. And this is a crowded edge draft class as well. This is and this is why I like the Bears not spending money on an edge unless it's a really good edge could make some sense. But Scrutiny, I believe is how you pronounce it. This is a guy that, listen, he's the caliber of player that the Bears could get there, and it makes a lot of sense. He's a really good run defender as well as that. He has some solidness in the pass rush as well. His size, the size that he has, this type of size that Dennis Allen likes having as well, right? And there's been some talk about him potentially being a 5 tech at the next level that can play every single down. And so if that ends up being the case, it is what it is. Some people have better, speed times and things like that. But I think overall, this is a guy that could make some sense for the Chicago Bears here in round 2. Now, with the second round 2 pick and pick number 41, this mock draft has the Bears selecting Travion Henderson, the running back out of OSU. Now, you guys know I had an OSU running back on my board. Bashawn Judkins is still my guy here. But Travion is still another. He's a talent, right? 5'10", 208 pounds. I like the size that Judkins brings more than Henderson overall, and I think that he still has hugely great mobility, even with being a little bit bigger. But that's my thought process. All 4 years at OSU, right? He had over 1,000-yard seasons. One his freshman year, one his last year at OSU. He had 10 touchdowns last year, 11 the year before that, 6 his sophomore year, and 15 his freshman year at OSU. This guy also solid enough in the pass game as well. Has some upside as a dual threat running back here for the Chicago Bears. It just depends on what the Bears are looking for. I like more size to pair with DeAndre Swift personally, but if you get a guy in here, 5'10", still a decently sized running back, can get it, put his shoulders down. He's a solid runner when it comes down to it as well. And I think when you look at it, like his combine workouts were absolutely great, right? The vision that he has as a ball carrier is amazing. His running style is really good, right? And he's somebody that you could see maybe even starting right away in the NFL and taking some snaps away from DeAndre Swift if that's something that the Bears are looking for, even in their pursuit of a running back in the draft. We're hearing more and more that the Bears will take a running back in this draft for whatever that's worth. So you look at that when it comes down to it. Now, in round 3 at pick 72, they do have the Bears selecting Jarrett Wilson, the interior offensive lineman from Georgia. I like my Georgia offensive and defensive linemen, so I completely understand that. The problem with Jarrett Wilson, though, is that he does have limited experience as a starter, right? And so there's some questions about that. And to me, with where we are with our offensive line, do we want to draft another player with so many questions, right? Keep in mind, we still got Karen Amagaje, who still have huge questions about on what he's going to be at the NFL level. But, he ran a sub 5 40-yard dash. It is what it is. I've always said I don't understand why people make such a big deal out of 40-yard dash times for offensive linemen. Like, when's the last time you looked at an offensive lineman and their 40-yard dash time made a big difference in whatever you were seeing? But with the air of trick plays, things like that, you never know. I do think Wilson's going to have to put on some weight here at the next level, right? But the fact that he's able to handle pass rushers really well at the interior level, that's really good when it comes down for him. He can play at a lot of different offensive line spots as well, right? So you would be taking him based off raw athletic ability and trying to add some tools to that and develop him, which is something we've seen the Bears do a few times over the last couple of years. So we'll see what happens there. But overall, I think this is a solid mock for the Chicago Bears throughout their first 4 picks in this year's draft. And I think it's some solid talent here. Now, we'll be coming out with our second round of mock drafts here over the next coming weeks. So be on the lookout for that. But I think overall, it just comes down to this, man. You never quite know. And a lot of this will be determined by free agency as well. We don't want to be one of those outlets that have 5 5 different versions of our mock drafts because some people start so early. We did a pre-combine version. We may do a post-combine version and then a post-free agent version. But more than likely, you're probably just going to be waiting until at least the start of free agency before we come out with another mock because we just don't want to overdo it with the mock drafts. But let us know what you guys think down below. Do you want more mock drafts than less mock drafts? Let us know what you guys think on that down below. Let's get into the last topic for today, right? And this is that it was said that Caleb Williams may have a reality check coming with Ben Johnson. And, that's not a bad thing if Ben Johnson does have a reality, if Caleb Williams does have a reality check under Ben Johnson, right? So it is what it is when it comes down to it. But, I think when you look at it, you got it. Scouts said this, right? The league will be watching how Johnson's relationship with Williams develops and plays out on the field. One league source familiar with Johnson's coaching style described him as intensely passionate, someone who could be red ass and pissy during games. Those descriptions were meant as compliments. Johnson is competitive and his players will feel it, especially his quarterback. The question is, how well will Williams respond to it from Johnson? Some observers, though, think Williams needs that type of coaching after watching him during his rookie season. He's going to be on his case, the source said. He's going to be challenged. Johnson should be good for Caleb, a scout said. Here's the thing, right? I love all of that. And listen, I've said this before. Your coach needs to be a bit of an asshole when needed. I just think that good, solid head coaches need the ability when it's called upon, not just to be an asshole, but you need to be able to be an asshole, a bit of an asshole. And I do think Caleb Williams needs to be coached hard, right? I think that you ran into a coach in Matt Eberflus, I know at the time we talked about it as a positive, right? But Matt Eberflus sitting down with Nick Saban and Nick Saban basically have to coach him through how to coach quarterbacks, I think told us exactly where we were. And we saw that play out on the football field, right? We saw that play out real time during the season. We saw all that happen, right? And so getting a guy like Ben Johnson that gets fired up, that's the way that I read that, is a coach that's passionate on the sidelines. And here's the thing that I tell you so much. We got to stop it, right? We got to stop feeling like coaches nowadays can't be fiery. I want my coach to be passionate. I want my coach to give a damn. I want my coach to be just as fired up as the players during losses, during wins. I want them to be as invested in the game. How many times on the sideline did we see Matt Eberflus sitting over there with his hands either on his waist or whatever else and just looking like, oh, well, okay, let's see what happens. Lost, like fucking goofy, right? That's what I don't want to see that anymore. I don't want to see that. That's not what I'm here for. I want a coach that's going to get fired up. I want a coach that's going to be passionate. You know what? That video that we saw when Ben Johnson got introduced at Hollis Hall, when he came through there fired up, those type of things, that's the coach that I want on my sideline. That's the kind of passion that I want coaching my football team. So if it means getting under Caleb's skin a little bit to force growth, it's called growing pains for a reason. You should be a little uncomfortable when you're growing, right? You just should be. And that's what Caleb has to embrace throughout this process. I don't want a coach that's going to come in here and coddle Caleb Williams. Now, I think that Caleb and Ben Johnson and their relationship, how much they respect each other, the chemistry, that's going to be hugely important for the present and the future of the Chicago Bears. Make no mistake about it, right? You have to be willing as a head coach to force that development. It's like I said, it's called growing pains for a reason. If you're not willing to force that, if you're not willing to pitch your team, not just your quarterback, your team overall in places where they have to grow, then you're going to fail in that. And that's what we had with Matt Eberflus. Nobody learned anything under Matt Eberflus. That's why he eventually lost the locker room, right? Somebody who is there tied in with the war with your players, that's where players start feeling like they're connected to your head coach. That's what you need to see here. You need to see guys, you need to see a coach, you need to see a coaching staff overall from top to bottom that's all invested in what this team could be. That's what you have to see. If you're not seeing that, that's more scary than having a coach that's just sitting on the sideline, right? Everybody should be fired up. And so hearing that Ben Johnson is a guy that gets hot, that gets upset, that gets pissy during games, I want that. How many times do we see bad calls that Matt Eberflus just sat there looking like a doofus, right? We don't want to see that. I don't want Officer Dewey as my head coach. I want a guy with some passion. So Ben Johnson bringing that passion, great. If that means that Caleb Williams is in for a wake-up call, so fucking be it. Wake the hell up. You know what needs to be woken up? This city needs to be woken up. This franchise needs to be woken up. Wins need to be woken up for the Chicago Bears. So if it comes by rustling some feathers, I said it before, right? During the head coaching search, you should be able to have a coach that's willing to ruffle some feathers. Doesn't mean that they're doing it just to ruffle feathers, but it means that if that's what gets the job done, that's what's right in that moment, that's what you do. So hopefully we start seeing that from the Chicago Bears, man. We'll see. But these quotes, this thing, it doesn't bother me. That's what I want to see. So if Caleb Williams needs to become a little bit uncomfortable initially to understand what's asked of him and what needs to happen, man, and listen, I want my players on the sideline look and be like, that motherfucker a little crazy. That's what I want to happen. So I'm not mad at it at all. You guys, as always, can let me know how you feel down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at Shy Bears Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and our voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that's thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.